It's spring in the Lowcountry in 2024. We're going to go over the data, really actually pleasantly surprised about how strong the market is right now, so let's get after it. All right, Chris, so here it is. It's spring, mid-March at this point in 2024. Time flies, right? So we just kind of want to talk about how and why we feel like we're still catching our breath. We're tracking just within Collins Group. I think we've done maybe 90 deals so far year to date. That's better than a deal a day. That's a really healthy pace. And so much work involved in every transaction with buyers, with sellers. Transactions are kind of normalizing. We've got inspections happening more and financing happening more, appraisals happening more, et cetera. So let's just break it down a little bit and talk about sort of the data on what we're seeing and experientially kind of what's catching our attention, et cetera. So what's the first data point that kind of catches your attention?
Well, in spring, typically we have inventory rise in most all markets, and this is happening nationally, not just here, but We're seeing it happen here. I mean, year to date, new listings are up 24%. Listings in general are starting to build, and that's creating an atmosphere where buyers have more selections to choose from. It's also brought, if we look at the market as a whole, it's brought our monthly housing supply just now over 3 months, which technically is a balanced market. And so in concert with that, we're seeing prices kind of hold relatively stable, even though average sale prices are up and median sale prices are notably up. Both of those are notably up. But as far as when you're looking at values overall, right now we've had a lot of activity in the market. Buyers are paying maybe what a true comparable was,
right. Yeah,
but
sure.
they're a little more hesitant to maybe pay more.
Well, I think you talked about like the number of new listings. I think in February alone, compared to February last year, number of new listings that came on the market was up 30%. So we're kind of trending on that. If it's 24 year to date percent increase, February was a big part of that. And you look at the total inventory of homes for sale on the market is up some 40% from where we were this time last year. So buyers have got more choices, and I think that's on the selling side. You're working with a seller, you're having more of that concerted conversation. Frankly, there are more data points where you can kind of hang your hat. So when you're looking at relevant data, or people call them comps, a little bit more to rely on, and buyers seem to be relying on that too. Even though the demand seems to be really strong. And what's notable is that you look at, my goodness, if you're looking at the average sales price is up pretty considerably, I think maybe 10% from where we were this time last year. I don't know that sellers can necessarily expect that, all of a sudden, like every house went up 10% from this time last year, right? So what's the difference there?
Well, we're seeing some higher end properties, some higher price properties transact this first quarter, which is nice. We're seeing some new list prices hit the market that we've never seen before. I mean, numerous. Numerous. I mean, really nice homes. There's some really nice properties in Sea Pines along the beach, in Palmetto Bluff, Colleton River, all these places. We're seeing some price points the market has just never seen before. And so we're kind of testing that. Now, those types of properties don't really have comps. They're
outliers.
Yes, they're outliers, but we're still having those high-end listings like that. Is pretty neat to see, and we're going to be watching that as we head into the second quarter.
You were sharing right before we got on that there was one transaction, it was a land transaction. It's in our MLS, but a little bit out of our primary MLS.
Yeah, I think it's important when you're looking at things like average prices per an MLS a piece of time period or whatnot, you got to watch out because there are some outliers. There are some sales that got thrown into the MLS that were really not true market sales. They didn't have any market exposure.
Right.
Maybe there's a deal that got put together kind of behind the scenes, and all of a sudden there's a $15 million land sale out in there. So
that's going to bump things up.
It bumps things up. So we kind of need to watch things a little bit closer. We need to dive into sub-markets as opposed to broad markets.
Yeah.
And kind of see what things are all I can say is demand is keeping track with inventory, And even though inventory's going up, demand seems to be
It's right there
following
with it.
suit.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's also kind of balanced too that we look at is that we're still right at that 98% sales price to list price ratio. So when
Yes.
sellers like, well, how much could I expect to get? And I'm talking about a couple percentage points that are coming off of list price. Now, of course, that's an average too, because we know we've
Yes.
seen some that were a good bit below that, and we're still seeing some, frankly, that we had one recently that went over list price, and so it's that pixelization. We keep talking about it, how you got to study the sub-market because there are some market areas that really have a pretty heavy inventory right now. And,
Right.
and there's some price reductions happening, some softening. Some buyers are like, oh, I got a chance to kind of choose my first, second, third choice. I'm going to go after the first choice. If that doesn't work out with an offer, I'll go after the next one. So there's some of that that's happening, but then there's others where there's just not that much to choose from, and buyers are still having to kind of step up and willingly stepping up to make sure they secure that property.
They are, and buyers they're not going to just do anything right now. I mean, buyers are okay sitting on the sidelines if price doesn't seem to be right or if condition doesn't seem to be right. They're okay waiting a little bit, but they're waiting, and they've got their pre-qual letter in their pocket, they've got their agent on hand, and they're waiting to actually perform.
Yeah.
It's not like they're waiting for the market to change. They're just waiting for the right piece of inventory to come along. Buyers that sat on the sidelines and waited for the market to change last year running into this year, now they're seeing higher prices.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we've got a very healthy market. Everything is active right now. There's a ton of buying and selling going on Hilton Head and the surrounding Lowcountry area. And I'm pretty optimistic with how Q1 is shaping up.
There's no doubt. And the thing is, you talked about the other thing buyers were sort of waiting for, I think, and we talked about it even at the couple months ago. We're like, okay, we're hearing that prognosticators are saying rates are gonna come down, but it, generally speaking, is looking like that's not going to happen
Right.
with other economic influences, and buyers aren't waiting for that to happen anymore. I mean, we look at a lot of our good lender partners and friends and people that we do a lot of work with. Last year was a tough year. Their phone wasn't ringing that much, and then boom, it seemed like as soon as 24 hit, buyers basically said, you know what, this is what it's going to be. Historically, this is a decent rate.
Yeah.
I'm not going to put my life off and my purchasing decision off on waiting for a rate that might drop 0.5% or 1%. I'm just going to go for it. So their phones are buzzing, and we're seeing a lot of that kind of activity. We're having closed mortgage purchases happen all the time, which is really encouraging because, frankly, that's a big part of the nature of our business.
Yeah, I love actually being able to see financed deals come together day after day, and lenders are performing. Appraisers still have the data that they need to justify values. It's not like anything's happening on the contrary of that. And so sellers right now aren't as scared as maybe or nervous about accepting a deal that
Right.
is tied to financing. Because those are actually closing.
Yeah, and so you think about, like, it sounds like we've got a sufficient amount of demand to eat at this growing inventory. We've got a little bit more of a normalized market where we've got loans and we've got home inspections happening, some discussions around those things. A lot of that went away during the pandemic market. And we just edged into market-wide that three month supply of inventory, which is just on that lower edge of a balanced market. And it kind of feels like that, right? It kind of feels like you're having a little bit more even-keel discussions between buyers and sellers, a little bit more negotiability, a little bit more standard terms, and it's all full steam ahead because it's just about all that it seems like the market can handle is going and going and going. Right?
Well said.
So anyway, that's what's happening in the Lowcountry right now. Of course, we'll be back to you guys soon with the next update.